It is time to wake up. On this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media won't touch. Live from the Rocky Mountains. Welcome to Redacted with Natalie and Clayton Morris. Are you ready? Let's get uncomfortable. And welcome in, everyone, to Redacted on this Thursday from the snowy Rocky Mountains right now, digging out from our big snowstorm. Welcome in, everyone. Hey, we have a very busy show for you on this Thursday. The pipe bomber arrested, perhaps, or not at all? Is this totally a fake news story? And an FBI cover-up continues about this. We've got a lot of questions about an individual who has just been arrested early this morning in Woodbridge, Virginia. Yeah, this thing probably doesn't pass the smell test, but of course, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, all of them were out there in holding their big press conference today. So we're going to talk about that coming up here in just moments.
We're also going to talk about leaked calls out of Europe showing how European leaders are undermining President Trump's efforts to bring a peace plan to Ukraine. Shocker. I know. We're also going to talk to Lara Logan, who has asserted that there is a coup in the deep state in the Trump administration. So we're going to talk about, she's always got the best intel sources. What does she know? Is this actually something that is thwarting the Trump agenda, which is not played out as it was promised from the campaign? And finally, 1,000 Christian pastors are headed to Israel this week. They're there right now for a programming summit about how to teach Christianity through the lens of support for a foreign government, which I don't know if you know this, Clayton, but the Bible specifically forbids any loyalty to a foreign government. And so how is this happening?
We always have carve-outs, though. It's no problem.
Is there a carve-out in the Bible?
Apparently. We're just going to add one.
Interesting.
Like, hey, I'm going to create my own Bible.
Did they update
the Schofield Bible. Just create a new one. Yeah, they updated it. Somebody's going to come along. There's going to be a whole new section.
These are the
hell.
Cliff's Notes.
Yeah, exactly.
The Cliff's Notes. Now, I have something else to say. This we're not planned. We're not going to make this a big part of the agenda. But I am very interested in the conservative discourse right now on X, because I think people, we fashion ourselves independents and anti-war thinkers. That is our number one agenda here on this show. But conservatives, specifically MAGA conservatives, they have been fighting this notion that they are sexist and racist and whatnot. No, conservatives are not that. That's what liberals think of them. But then watch how they respond to Candace Owens, who all she is doing is asking questions around the circumstance of her friend Charlie Kirk's death. And all of a sudden is the language of racist and sexist. Do you not see this? I can't get over this, watching this play out online. She's crazy. She's hysterical. She's now a Karen, right? Which you know how I feel about that term. I think it's ageist. What do you think of this? This idea that, oh no, they're totally accepting people, but Candace Owens, she specifically is crazy.
Well,
I didn't prepare you for this, but
no,
I'm watching
I mean, I don't like it. What do you want me to say? I don't know. I don't like the attacks on her and unfounded attacks on her. But I mean, I don't know about the sexist stuff. I mean, I haven't been watching that.
I feel like a lot of it comes out in the language that they are, that they have said that they reject this sort of sexist. No, she's just a crazy woman. She's hysterical. So anyway, I think that we will continue to talk about this more, but it's the personal attacks that I'm so surprised by. Go ahead,
David.
I was just going to say, I thought the whole Republican thing was against identity politics, period.
Right.
The left did that. This is not supposed to be this side.
Yeah, that's exactly what's confusing me. So let's put a pin in that. If you want to have a conversation about that on X, go ahead. Although I sort of rang in on this Turning Point's announcement that they're going to have a debate. And I was like, they're making themselves out to be the victim of her questions. That's weird. It plays to me like kind of a snivelly, dorky, liberal victim making. I don't understand it. The comments that came at me, and again, I thought Turning Points was a conservative Christian group, calling me the B word, the C word, F off. Retarded. I got that as well.
Why did you say the R word? You're allowed to say that, though.
I didn't. I said retarded.
I know, but you said the C word, the B word, and then retarded.
Yeah. And then I said it again. I meant the F word.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyhow, I just would like to have a conversation about that some other time. It's not on our agenda, but I'm curious about it, how it's playing, this online discourse.
Was your first thought, my first thought when she said that, or when they invited her, I was like, I wouldn't go there in person. I would
don't
do it
go
online.
in person. Absolutely not. Yeah, and don't let them mic you. Yeah.
No courtyard. Don't do it in a college courtyard.
Right.
Jenny says, I'm disappointed with her.
Okay. That is a fine thing to say. It's not about her as a hysterical black woman, right? And so, okay, then let's engage on the content. What specifically about her questions is upsetting you without becoming personal? Although I guess I just became personal. I called them dorky and snivelly.
Yeah.
So, okay, I shouldn't play that game. I'm lecturing myself. Let's move on. We have a lot of news.
That's not personal because you're saying it about an organization, not an individual.
I'm saying the individuals that run it are dorky and snivelly.
Okay.
I don't think we should give me a pass.
She just backtracked from the backtrack.
Yeah. Don't give me a pass. I did it. I made a personal attack. So anyhow, all right, let's move on. Before we get to the news, Clayton wants to tell you about our friends over at Bearskin because he has been shoveling snow in his bearskin all week.
Yes, not with my bare ass, but in my bare skin. Been wearing my bearskin hoodie all the time. You guys know about the bearskin hoodie, right? Well, if you've been waiting to get yourself one, now is the time. It's officially hoodie season. Cold mornings, windy days, surprise snow. Right now, we're digging out of a snowstorm. I wore it yesterday with the snow plow yesterday. I was wearing it all evening. My son had his on. He was out sledding with his friends. And so Bearskin is running their biggest deal of the year. We're talking 60% off. Right now, this is not some old fleece. This thing is built with 340 GSM bearskin fleece, 10 pockets. It's a rugged, athletic fit that looks good on you. Plus, if it starts pouring, you can zip into your heavy rainstorm jacket and instantly level up to full waterproof protection. You get free U.S. shipping from their U.S. warehouse, gear that'll last you season after season. So here's what you need to do right now to get 60% off. Just text the word redacted to 36912. Again, that's redacted to 36912. And they'll text you a link so you can lock in your 60% off before the sale disappears. Don't wait till the weather gets really bad. Grab a bearskin now while this Black Friday deal is live. And one more thing. When you support Bearskin, you're also supporting the Fallen Outdoors and the Hope for the Warriors Veterans Program. So you're not just buying great gear, you're backing a great cause that matters. Grab your Bearskin while this deal is active, 60% off. Text the word redacted to 36912.
Clayton was the envy of the neighborhood yesterday in his bearskin, and he has a brand new snowplower.
Yeah,
all the young boys were like, look at that guy. He was like, you know,
that's right.
It was impressive. All your tech.
Women probably don't understand this, but for men, yes, exactly.
No, I didn't understand it at all. But my teenage boy came in and was like, wow, the neighbor and I were looking at Daddy and his high-powered snowblower like, yes. Look, he's got all the good stuff.
I've done right. Exactly.
It's like Costner in Yellowstone.
Yeah. Except our next guest, his office totally trumps mine with his like guns all over his wall, like and an entire gun locker, like a gun locker that slides out from underneath his bed, like it's like Iron Man there. So he's got me beat. We're going to get to our next guest in a second.
But he doesn't need a snowblower. He's in Florida.
No, he's in Texas. He isn't.
Oh, I thought it was Florida.
He just has a lot of guns. All right. Hey, well, it only took 5 years, but a suspect in the January 6th pipe bomb story has finally been arrested. Officials with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, the most transparent FBI in history, we're so back, baby. They told Fox News that they arrested the suspect early Thursday morning. Fox News says the suspect is a man by the name of 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr. This is the house, by the way. Lovely house. Lots of nice acreage there, right outside of D.C. and Woodbridge, Virginia. By the way, the average sales price of homes in that area, I looked up, about $700,000. So nice home for a pipe bomber or a pipe bomber suspect.
It's a good business to be.
Yeah, it's a good business. I guess it pays really well to be in the pipe bomb business. Early this morning, they surrounded this house in Woodbridge, Virginia. And of course, the pipe bombs were placed near the Republican National Committee's headquarters and the Democratic National Committee's headquarters about 16 hours before authorities located them. The FBI, the DOJ got together in front of the cameras because they love the cameras. And they wanted to talk about how tirelessly they've been working on this story. Watch.
When you attack American citizens, when you attack our institutions of legislation, when you attack our nation's capital, you attack the very being of our way of life. And this FBI and this Department of Justice stand here to tell you that we will always refute it and combat it. We will provide the safest country the nation has ever seen under President Trump's leadership here. And that's what we did here today with great resolve on a case of massive public importance, as it should be. An individual who is now alleged to have placed multiple explosive devices to blow up multiple people and multiple officials innocent civilians, is now arrested thanks to the brave men and women of the FBI and the interagency.
All right. Our next guest worked on this case. Well, he worked at the FBI and in the Washington field office specifically. He says this is a cover-up, plain and simple. Take a look at his most recent tweet here. This is from Kyle Seraphin. He tweeted, "Sorry, none of this is legit. I have videos of this man playing with his puppies 5 years ago. He has a rock-solid alibi. The gate analysis is also not real. The story is fake news." Uh-oh. Okay, so what the hell is going on here? Let's ask. FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin, host of the Kyle Seraphin Show, who worked directly on this case, and arguably no one has more knowledge of this than you. Kyle, welcome back to the show. Great to see you.
Good to see you guys. I just wanted to say that I worked on this case because it was very important to the being of our way of life in this nation, whatever that means.
Okay.
There was a
Have you ever noticed that when Patel and even Bondi does the same thing, they get out there and they talk? It occurred to me the other day. You ever watch professional wrestling?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You ever notice that the professional wrestlers, they're always out of breath when they're giving their hype statement? Like, let me tell you, like, this is the thing that's going on. Cash does the same thing. He's always like breathless. And so is Pam Bondi. They're like, we're good. They breathe at awkward places because they're so excited about telling you like whatever hype thing they have. That was the most embarrassing press conference. There was no information in it. Literally none of that would have been of interest.
Well,
how did you find this guy?
Right. I mean, so maybe we go through the complaint then, the criminal complaint, because I read the full criminal complaint. I'm sure you did as well. So
it's on my screen. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There was no mention of, well, how did this guy put all of this together? There was no mention of buying of materials, which is in the criminal complaint. There's no mention of him being in Washington, D.C. on that particular evening during this press conference, but it's in this criminal complaint, is it not? Can you walk us through what they are saying?
Yeah, so it sounds like an agent who should be competent, but started with the FBI in 2009. Kind of interesting. They redacted the name of the agent, which is not common, but it has been a thing for January 6 cases. Just so people understand, criminal complaints are public and they are filed on Pacer, and so you should be able to look up who's the FBI agent that is alleging that I did this thing. It's also interesting that it's a criminal complaint in and of itself. Generally speaking, and we've had a lot of time for this particular case, the FBI takes their cases to a grand jury. There are two ways that you get an arrest warrant. One of them is by indictment, which is what people are familiar with. You go in front of a grand jury as an FBI agent. You sit there. The assistant United States attorney will ask you a question. That's the prosecutor. You give them the story and the reason that you believe there's probable cause to believe that somebody committed a federal crime and what the elements of the crime look like. And then they can ask questions. The grand jury can. The foreman and other people that are sitting out there in the seats can ask questions specifically, and you answer to the best of your knowledge. And then you leave, and then they vote. They vote whether or not to give you what's called a true bill, which means you get an indictment, or they give no bill, which means that they don't think there's probable cause to believe the person did it. So that's how you get a little bit of a layer of protection. If you want an automatic arrest warrant, which is what they did for the J6ers, and I would argue they did it in a weaponized format because that's not the way the FBI does business. You send a complaint over to a judge, a magistrate judge, who's the lowest level federal judge, and they evaluate your complaint. And they decide whether it meets the burden of probable cause or not. And they're very, very squishy towards the FBI in general. You don't necessarily have to always have it all the way there. It's not like a cop movie where you've seen where they're like, come back with some more PC or whatever. They don't generally do that. They give you a lot of benefit of the doubt for being in the FBI. Then you raise your hand, you swear that it's true and complete, and then you go get an arrest warrant right then. So nobody else looks over it. In our system, theoretically, the criminal complaint should be a judge being very skeptical because they're the last line between law enforcement kicking down your door and that's it. There's no other parties involved. It's ex parte, and there's no other even members of a grand jury where you can still blow a lot of snow at them and kind of cover them up and make them believe whatever you want. But at least they have a handful of minds there. It's just one judge, and he should be more scrupulous. This is a very thin complaint. Very thin, I think. Nothing against the guy who wrote it. I don't know why he wrote it this way, but what it gives you is the story of January 6th in the background. I'm going to refer to it because it's on my screen right here. They got details wrong right away, which I don't know why. It's really easy to prove. But the original pipe bomb, the first one that was found outside of the RNC, was at 12:43 p.m. on January the 6th. And they say approximately 1 p.m., which is weird because then they go on and say the other one was found at approximately 1:15 and it was found at 1:05. So the timeline is not even right in their background statement. I don't know why they did that. It could be just laziness. It is the FBI. I don't know. But I read some of these things and I just go, okay, well, they give a little bit of background on the day of January 6th, the fact that there were, in fact, pipe bombs that were discovered and what they were composed of. And then they go on and they say that they observed someone called person of interest 1, who's the person you've seen on the screen that's walking around with the pipe bomb and so on, and give kind of the approximate time that the person traveled around Washington, D.C. and carried that backpack and apparently placed these pipe bombs. And then they give this, what do they call it? There's a name for it. Photometry examination or photogrammetry.
Yeah, photogrammetry.
The reverse projection photogrammetry examination, which said that this person was 5'7", plus or minus 1.1 inches. Okay. And then they go and identify the guy. And rather than saying anything about his ideology, his work history, his friend group, where he grew up and why he was this way, they just say Brian J. Cole Jr. is 30 years old. He's from Woodbridge, Virginia. He's 5'6", and he wears glasses. And he lives in a house. And he has a mom and family members. And he works in a bail bonds thing. Like nothing. And when I'm telling you it's thin, I went and pulled other cases. It's very interesting the way they charge this. They charge
Can I
it under
ask
a
you
very
right there, before you expand on this, because the government has said, well, there's no new evidence. We didn't have any help from anyone before. We just sort of furthered this case. The Biden administration, I guess what they're indicating is they dropped the ball. We picked it up and we finished it and we brought it home. That seems weird. With just like they picked it up off the floor and then they found this guy. Can you respond to that bit when you're talking about how he was identified?
Right. So all the stuff that they're identifying as far as the information and running down the types of leads and so they went through to like Home Depot receipts and credit cards and so on and so forth and who bought what. That was identified by Barry Loudermilk's committee in January of 2025, this year, on the 4-year update on the pipe bomb case. And so they had all this information theoretically, and they've been apparently going through it and have been for literally years. So why did it take 9 more months after the new administration came in? Assuming that the previous FBI and this FBI are different, which I don't think they're different. And to say that the previous FBI was covering it up, but the new FBI cares about the truth, which I don't think is true. If that was the case, then why was it 9 more months? I was talking to one of my buddies. I was like, what do you think? Well, like plus or minus, how long does it take you to run through some of this information? They're like a couple of weeks if you've already got all the background research done. There's a reason why the FBI was able to come up with persons of interest and why they were of interest when we were out there doing surveillance at the time.
Do you think that this is another? Do you think that this is another Richard Jewell situation? I mean, for those of our viewers who might not remember, Richard Jewell, of course, during the Olympics in Atlanta, young guy at the time, saw a suspicious package in Centennial Square, Centennial Park there at the Olympics, and cleared everyone out. Reporter names him, FBI rounds him up, names him as a primary suspect in placing this bomb. Turns out he was a hero and ruined his life. He died at 44 years old, heart failure. I wonder why he died so young.
Right.
I can only imagine. Your whole life is ruined. Janet Reno never apologized. The FBI never apologized. They cleared him, but they never apologized for ruining his life. Do you think that we're looking at another?
They never did. Well, and the similar story to that is that there's a lot of political pressure at that time. That's why they had to come up with a suspect. They needed to show that something was being done. We used to joke that my surveillance team was the do something button, so that if they were like, oh my God, like this thing happened, what do we do? Like, bing, they'd hit the button and the klaxon would go off at the hangar where we worked, and then we would all like rush out to the cars and do surveillance on somebody for no particular reason. And like, I'm not even exaggerating, because
from Spaceballs.
I literally sat in a car. I've sat in a car, freezing my butt off in the middle of a government shutdown when the rest of the government wasn't working because of a snow day in Northern Virginia, like doing quote unquote something, watching a potential terrorist. And it turned out that he was like an Afghan translator, but it wasn't even the right translator. We were just watching a translator, but not the translator that they were worried about. And it was because they wanted to be able to articulate they did something. So the FBI does something all the time. And I used to be on the team that would respond to do that. And it didn't really hurt anybody's feelings if we were watching them, because you never know we were there. But if you go and arrest somebody because you're trying to do something, that's really nerve-wracking. Let me hit the high points of this complaint, if you guys are okay with it, because essentially what they did is they ran down the construction materials, but not all of them, that were resulting in what they believe was the manufacturing of this pipe bomb. But it doesn't even pass like the basic smell test to me. Look, they didn't put everything they've got, and maybe they'll come forward with more information, so I'm open to being wrong in the future. But the claim is that starting in 2019, this guy started slowly accumulating materials to be able to build what would eventually be the 2 pipe bombs. And based on what they've said he accumulated, he would have been able to build more of them. And he was so thorough in his diabolical plan for this 2-year build of the pipe bombs that would eventually be left outside of the DNC and the RNC, that he used his credit card when he did it sometimes, but when he used cash, they were also able to track it. So I assume he used like an e-rewards card or something, so he got points. And he did it by buying things that people buy all the time. Remember, we're talking about 2019, 2020. How many home renovations were going on during that time? How many people were not able to go to regular work? And so they were doing, they became do-it-yourself experts. I knew a bunch of people that were involved in that. And I don't know if that was the same in the bail bond work that he was in, but his major crime here is that 2019, 2020, over a period of 2 straight years, he accumulated 6 1-inch by 8-inch long galvanized pipes and 12 end caps and a couple of 9-volt battery connectors with some red wires. And they were 14-gauge wires. And he bought 14-gauge wires at 2 locations, Home Depot's and Lowe's. I mean, he also apparently, this one's really fun, both pipe bombs were manufactured using white kitchen-style timers. Cole purchased 2 white kitchen timers from a Walmart in Northern Virginia in July of 2020. That would have been 7 months before the bombs were dropped. And they don't claim that they're the same white timers. They just said that he bought 2 white timers and 2 white timers were used. But were they the same white timers? That seems kind of relevant. So this guy is a criminal mastermind who spends time spacing out the bomb-making components over a period of years. But what's his ideology? And what drove him to do this? And what argument have they made that even connected him? Then you go on and you read further. His bomb-making equipment included safety glasses and a wire stripper. Like everything on this list, or literally everything on this list, is in my garage. And so I also apparently have this equipment. He has a machinist file. Like I've got a drawer full of machinist files. I had no idea that I also was accumulating bomb-making equipment. And I'd be shocked if some of them were not purchased during this time frame.
I'm sure you're on a list. Let's just put it.
I'm also 5'8", so like I'm roughly in the same height category of this guy, and I lived in Northern Virginia. Like,
he was gonna break things on Redacted. So
all along we figured that. Now we know.
Yeah,
we're looking at Richard Jewell right in our faces. But let's go back to
here's the crazy thing too.
Go ahead.
You know what they don't have? They don't say anything about the actual part of the bomb that matters, the bomb part of the bomb. There's no indication here that they found that he had bought the explosive, the black powder, whether he'd been part of, bought any of the ammonium or any of the other stuff. So where's that? Because that seems like the most relevant part of the bomb is the part that explodes to me. Call me crazy.
Where's the Capitol Hill police section of all of this? I mean, a lot of people saying this doesn't pass the smell test. Your tweet, and let's put your tweet back up here again on the screen. Sorry, none of this is legit. I have videos of this man playing with puppies 5 years ago. He is a
that's
rock
my
star.
joke, obviously.
That's a joke, yeah. But you're saying that this is fake, like that this is not. They've got the wrong person here. Where is the Capitol Hill police?
That whole post is sarcasm because ABC News identified that this guy was noted for having a particular gait, and I was told in no uncertain terms that gait analysis is not real, except that it is, and we drone strike people for it. So there's that. The joke is that they cleared a Capitol police officer because apparently, not the FBI, but CBS News witnessed people who are familiar with the matter, whoever they are, maybe her mom and lawyer and her, playing with puppies, plural, even though she only has 1 dog, and it's not a puppy, it's an old retired greyhound. So we got this one story where a very credible allegation came forward from my friend Steve Baker. Full disclosure, we are friends. I do believe that what he said is correct because he's been doing this really aggressively. And if I had to choose between a guy who was arrested by the FBI for being a journalist and the FBI which arrested him, I choose my friend Steve is more likely to have a pure motive. Like he doesn't have anything to win by getting the wrong person. He just doesn't. He just followed the leads, and the leads put him 1 door away from somebody that we were watching at the time, a week and a half, 2 weeks after January 6th. And that seemed like an astronomically bizarre coincidence. We did the numbers. It's like 2.4 million households. To pick 2 of them at random and then be next door to each other it's insane. There's like, I think it's like 5.7 trillion to 1 that you would pick 2 houses next door to each other in Northern Virginia and DC. So for whatever that's worth. So that's part 1 of it. And then the second thing is like, how do we get away from the Capitol Police involvement? There has to be some involvement from Capitol Police. Number 1, everybody who's been part of it, including the guys who run the FBI now, all said this was an inside job. I believe them because it has all the hallmarks of something that had government cover-up. We know for a fact that the Capitol Police refuse to make themselves available to the J6 committees that are going on, including the new one. They are being excluded from any interviews or witness list. They will not be deposed. They will not be questioned in any meaningful way. And 2 Capitol police officers from the counter surveillance team exited their vehicle after the first bomb was found and went looking for any bombs in the Capitol region or in the Capitol Hill area. And they went to the exact place the person in the hoodie went the night before first and got there in like 7 minutes and then found the actual bomb in under 11 minutes and 7 seconds. Imagine leaving your car looking for bombs anywhere in Washington, D.C. And anyone who's ever been to D.C., there's bushes everywhere. There's buildings all over the place. You walk around immediately, and in under, 11 minutes and a half, 11 and a half minutes, under 12 minutes, you're right at where the only bomb was. And then they quit. Then they were like, that's it. The bombs are done. Even this affidavit doesn't seem to allege that. They claim that there's like 6 tubes. So where are the other bombs? Why has someone not been feverishly looking for them? Why are members of Congress willing to go to work every single day knowing that some crazy wild dude is out there who drops pipe bombs indiscriminately in Washington, D.C. and has never been caught? Would you want to go to work if you knew that somebody was throwing down bombs, or did you know that there was never going to be any more bombs? And so that seems to be the story to me.
What is politically useful about having some kind of solution to this right now for the Justice Department?
All right, you want the FBI rumor mill stuff?
Yeah, I do. I want it.
A buddy of mine told me, and a second guy is confirming this for me, that the security detail for Dan Bongino is packing his place in D.C. and moving him back down to Florida. So it's Dan Bongino's birthday today. That'd be a hell of a birthday present to be able to go out on a win and be able to say that. I'm also told that Patel is trying to dedicate a Quantico gym, which they're about to open up in about a month and a half. But he wants to dedicate it in the next week or two, because the expectation is, and the rumor running around inside FBI headquarters, he's not going to be here at the end of the year. And if that's the case, he wants to go and get something with his name where he can go and, christen the new FBI gym. I did this thing, everybody wants to put their mark on something.
Patel will be out by the end of the year, you believe?
There's a real possibility. And it aligns with some of the stuff we've seen. What we saw was somebody get promoted from what's called the assistant director role in the criminal investigation division. That's the crown jewel of the FBI. If you wanted to be the top FBI agent, the way FBI agents think of it, that's it. You're in charge of the criminal division, you win. Like, you could retire on that and be a happy guy. And so the guy who was there was named Chad Yarborough. He promoted into what's called the ADD role. The ADD role is the number 3. So the FBI's org chart goes director, deputy director. Now there's a co-deputy director, so that's weird. And then below that is the number 3 called the ADD, or the associate deputy director. Yarborough just moved into the number 3. He's not on the org chart. If you go to FBI.gov and look at leadership and structure, you won't find him on there. He's just not listed. The guy who's on there retired. And the way I heard it, which I've heard it from a couple of people now, is that he went and gave a presentation to the special agents in charge of all the field offices. There's 55 of them. And when he was speaking, he was booed off the stage because the FBI middle management doesn't like what Patel and Bongino are doing, because they're like, Ray Comey acolytes. A lot of them are. But the funny thing is that all the competent agents that are working in the field, they don't want to be part of it either, because they think this is a complete shit show. And so you have this funny little moment where only the most sniveling of the snakes, which is actually in my Twitter timeline as well, the snivelingest person decided to try to edge up there, hoping he can outlast Dan Bongino, and then maybe he gets to be the number 2 in the Bureau, which I guess is a win because it is a pay bump. And so you got Chad Yarborough. I know guys who worked with Chad. They thought he was a snake. They said he was like a yes man's yes man. So if that guy is going to go and take the number 2 role, who's left? But Andrew Bailey, which is what I told you, they moved him in the first place there. He's either going to go to DOJ. Somebody said he was going to be the attorney general, maybe, but he was the Trump administration's first pick to be the FBI director. So if everything actually rolls out this way, and I think they're doing everything they can to kind of not make this happen, but the guys look like one of them looks like he's moving out, and the other one's looking like he's trying to get finishing touches to claim something, some sort of a legacy. Honest to God, that'd be the best thing the Trump administration could do. Like, can we just start destroying the weaponized government end? Because the thing that I can't figure out.
But that's terrifying. Like, hey, these guys were bad. They're being moved out. They'll indict an innocent man, maybe.
Yeah.
And then we'll get them out, and no, because all innocent people should be afraid of that. Like,
agreed.
It's not let's shake the can. Yeah. That's scary.
Here's the other thing I had 2 independent FBI agents bring this up to me. They don't know each other. And both of them have said the same thing as a plausible possibility. Because the question is how do you get someone to go along with this if, in fact, they are kind of taking a fall for this case? And both of them came up with the same solution, which is disturbing to me because they're both senior guys and have had more than a decade in the Bureau. The question was, if you got approached and they said, hey, we got you on child sexual assault material. We have you on child sexual abuse material, CSAM. You got 2 choices. We can knock your door down. We can take everything we got, and you're done. Or you confess up to the pipe bomb thing.
Yeah.
Because if I had to go to jail for either child pornography or a pipe bomb that was left in D.C., I'm taking the pipe bomb 10 times out of 10 if I know I'm going to prison anyway. The other thing that's really crazy about the way this was actually briefed out there in the complaint is that they are very specific about the charge, right? And they could always indict later on, but the charge is 18 U.S.C. 844 Delta. And that is like malicious damage, destruction, or attempted damage or destruction by fire or explosives. And they mentioned these particular buildings in D.C. You'll heard, if you listen to the press conference again, you can go back and listen again. They reiterate over and over again, these were live bombs. These were viable devices. But there's no indication that that's actually true. In fact, the FBI released a report through John Solomon not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago. And one of the devices tested positive for the flame test, and the other one was negative for the flame test, which means it was basically inert. And neither one of them showed that they were likely to go off, as far as I could tell. They were missing parts on one that didn't have the actual, it didn't have a connection where there should have been. So I'm not confident either of them were viable. And by the way, I was briefed that they weren't viable. And then lastly, if we can actually go to the summary that Barry Loudermilk's committee put out, which I think is actually pretty relevant. On page 73, people, you can check the math yourself. If you guys are okay with it, I'll just read the paragraph because it's kind of interesting. They said the FBI assessed pipe bombs for viability, but refused to determine, to explain how determinations of viability were established. So that's really specific. This is when Loudermilk and Tom Massey and the others gave this 4-year update. And they said that the pipe bombs consisted of these 60-minute timers and they were, quote unquote, viable explosives. Loudermilk's committee uses the word viable in quotes. And they could have, quote unquote, detonated and caused serious injury and killed innocent bystanders and so on. Then they get down to the second paragraph on there because they say that nobody says what viability is. Viability does not occur in the actual government document that was released by John Solomon, which was a declassified FBI or a released FBI doc. And they say this, according to an FBI bomb technician who agreed to speak to the committee staff on the condition of anonymity for fear of reprisal, the FBI's use of the term viable is a deviation from standard descriptions used by bomb technicians. And your EOD technicians that listen here will know that this is probably likely. Traditionally, bomb technicians avoid and deliberately avoid using vague language, choosing instead to refer to a bomb as a device and then say whether it would function as designed or as a hoax. In the case of these pipe bombs, it's unclear why the FBI insists on using this vague, non-standard description. And I was briefed days afterwards that these bombs looked very bomb-like. In other words, were inert. And I had other friends that were, friends with guys in the counter IED program. They said the same thing. It was very widely understood that these were not capable of going off. So charging this guy with this particular statute is interesting because they have to hone in on the quote unquote viability or the possibility of it actually burning, as opposed to the hoax and the threat and the terroristic type piece of it.
Kyle Seraphin, and we could talk for another hour. We got a whole bunch of guests lined up, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. And thank you for joining us on this sort of breaking news afternoon here on all of this. And there's no one I'd rather talk to about this as we unpack all of this. So follow Kyle. Watch the Kyle Seraphin show as he unpacks this over the next few days. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more about this, and we'd love to talk with you next week, too, as this thing unfolds. Kyle, great to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, y'all.
Thanks, Kyle. Wow. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts about this in the comments, I'm sure. All right, coming up on the show, we're going to talk with Dr. Olga Ravasi about European leaders and their sabotage of the Trump peace plan with Putin over Ukraine. Bombshell news out of Europe today. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about a possible coup inside the Trump administration with our friend Laura Logan coming up. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Masa Chips, because did you know that all chips and fries used to be cooked in tallow up until the 1990s when trans fats and seed oils took over American diets? Today, seed oils make up to 20% of the average American's daily calories. Recent studies have linked seed oils to metabolic health issues, inflammation in the body. Well, Masa decided to do something about it, and they created a tasty and delicious tortilla chip with just 3 ingredients, no seed oils. It's just corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. These chips don't just avoid the bad stuff. They include all the good stuff. They are hearty. They are delicious. They come in various flavors. The hearty, I really mean it, actually. We use these in our house. They hold up to whatever nachos, whatever dip you want to throw at it. They don't crack inside the dip, and then you have to, scoop it out with a spoon or something, and then start a fight with your sister when you fight over nachos, which I've been known to do. You know what I'm talking about, Lindsay. So anyhow, check out Masa Chips. Fewer fights with siblings over the shared nachos. I promise you that. We are big fans in this house. So go to masachips.com/redacted news. If you use the code redacted news, you'll get 25% off your first order. Again, go to masachips.com/redacted news. Use the code redacted news, 25% off. And if you don't feel like ordering, that's fine. You can find them at your local Sprouts supermarket. So stop by and pick up a bag before they're gone. masachips.com/redacted news.
Well, bombshell news out of Europe today. Newly leaked phone call logs show that European leaders are actively trying to thwart peace plans in Ukraine. Of course, they're bloodthirsty and they absolutely want war with Russia directly. A confidential call between European leaders and Ukrainian President Zelensky has leaked to the German newspaper Der Spiegel. They got their hands on it. The phone call was a setup to Zelensky, and they tried to warn him that the United States may betray Ukraine's interests in upcoming peace negotiations with Russia, basically lying to Zelensky, saying the U.S. would basically throw him under the bus. So go ahead and basically continue this war. According to the leaked notes, Emmanuel Macron warned that there's a possibility that the U.S. will betray Ukraine on the issue of territory without clarity on security guarantees, calling the situation a great danger. Friedrich Merz, for his part, on the German side, reportedly told Zelensky to be very careful, accusing U.S. envoys of playing games in negotiation. There's a whole bunch of other individuals on this call as well, from Finland, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, and other EU leaders. In other words, don't listen to the Americans. Listen to the trustworthy European leaders instead. Dr. Olga Ravasi joins us now to break this all down and also talk about the preemptive attacks that NATO seems to be planning against Ukraine or against Russia as well. Doctor, great to have you back on the show. Great to see you. What do you make of this Der Spiegel article, and why are we hearing about this now?
Good to see you guys again, and thank you for having me. Yes, I saw the article and saw several other international media outlets carry this. And look, at this point, I don't think that calls like this get leaked accidentally. I think this is a message that they're trying to send to President Trump first and foremost, and also to President Putin, to warn him that these negotiations must include not only Ukraine and the little dictator Zelensky or wannabe dictator, but the unelected bureaucracy and some of the elected leaders of the European nations who have been on a suicide mission for quite some time and have been shooting themselves in the foot, first and foremost economically, with all of their green agendas and all of the lunacy that they have been ushering and imposing on their own people. But they are trying to insert themselves into these negotiations because they realize that they are being sidelined, and rightfully so, because it is clear to all of us that the main decision makers on this will be Russians and Americans, meaning President Putin and President Trump. One thing that I thought was very interesting while President Putin was meeting with Jared Kushner and Witkoff, at the same time, Secretary Lavrov was meeting with his Chinese counterpart. So you imagine these bilateral meetings that are kind of ushering your multipolar world. Whether we want it or not, it is emerging. It is already actually here. And it is very clear what the lines in the sand are. It is China, Russia, and the United States. So, of course, the Europeans would want to play, a little part in this, but they're simply incapable because even their economies cannot sustain this. And back to NATO, I mean, what are they really thinking they're going to keep sending to Ukraine? They're completely depleted. They've got nothing. And they've been telling us all along that the Russians are running out of bullets. And they want to keep the racket going because, again, let's go back to the history of NATO a little bit. NATO has been obsolete for quite some time, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, since the collapse of the Warsaw Pact. NATO basically was deemed useless. Well, how did NATO reinvent itself? Through the war in former Yugoslavia, through the Balkanizing of Yugoslavia, and through the bombing campaign that they unilaterally conducted against Serbia and Montenegro at the time. And that happened without the UN approval, the Security Council or approval, and it happened against the will of the American people as well, because we didn't have the congressional approval to go into such a campaign. So NATO has been, as we used to think of it, a defensive alliance. NATO has been incredibly aggressive and has been serving as an extended tool of the global empire, if you will, global American empire. But what I'm also concerned about is that this is an offshoot of the global British Empire, because while these meetings have been happening in Russia, while the Europeans are leaking the calls with Zelensky to send a message to President Trump, I don't know if you guys caught this, but at the Windsor Castle, King Charles had a banquet with the German Prime Minister Merz. And interestingly, at these banquets, geopolitical things are seldom discussed openly. What King Charles said was a stern message, at least as far as I'm concerned, which was that the Anglo-German alliance will stand opposing Russia and continue standing with Ukraine. So what does this tell us? All of these meetings are actually a threat to, let's say, hundreds of years of the extension of the British Empire, which has used the United States basically as its tool and has used us as foot soldiers to accomplish their goals, financial, military, globalist, etc. So I think they are panicking because they are realizing that President Trump also knows that there are three superpowers emerging, and those three superpowers are going to be making those decisions. And one other thing, who is going to be the adult in the room to stop NATO from this suicide mission? It has to be President Trump, because let's face it, who's paying for this? Who's footing the bill? We are, and President Trump needs to be very stern and put a stop to this.
Now, recently, Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, says that NATO is on track to spend over $1 trillion per month.
$1 billion.
$1 billion per month in 2026 to supply weapons to Ukraine. They don't have that. So what is that going to do to the Euro? So they're pretending that they can come to the high rollers table on this idea that they need to fight a war. They are not fighting the war. The war is not in Europe, not in NATO countries, and they're not. So it's like a cosplay. It's like war costume party. It's so dumb, but it will hurt the European people to do this, and the United States by extension, because we are still part of NATO. So what are they playing at?
Well, so they're playing several things. And let's face it, NATO and the European bureaucrats and even President Trump's administration is still surrounded by some of these neocons, by some of the people who are part of the swamp, who continue to be part of the deep state. And they funnel money into NATO, and they funnel money with their, buddies over at Mossad and CIA and BND and MI6. All of them are continuing to cosplay that Zelensky is somehow going to be victorious, but just keep sending us more money. The victory is around the corner. Just keep doing the racket over and over again, because again, war is a racket. And all of these people that are running the show are benefiting. But one thing that has to be made clear is, if you look at the world currently, every single point globally that is at war is bringing about torment against Christians, and most dominant in that being Orthodox Christians. When you look at what is happening with Russia and Ukraine, I mean, these are two brotherly nations, essentially. And President Putin is very strategically precise about how they are conducting this special military operation, because we must remember that this war didn't start a year ago or 2 years ago, or with the beginning of the special military operation. This war started again with the American bureaucrats and European bureaucrats assisting Maidan in 2014 and handing out muffins and croissants while Ukrainians were being killed and sniped, and while Maidan was going on. So this has been happening for quite some time. And back to our European friends and NATO friends who keep now saying, well, we cannot redraw maps of Europe. Well, let me remind them that they actually unilaterally bombed a country in the heart of Europe, Serbia, to redraw maps of a sovereign country, internationally recognized sovereign country, taking away Kosovo from Serbia. This is a precedent that they created that now President Putin is using legitimately. Let's compare it to Crimea. Well, they're saying there's no comparison. Actually, there is. In fact, there was no referendum in Kosovo. Crimea had a referendum, and over 90% of them voted to join Russia. President Putin realizes that eastern part of Ukraine is essentially Russian-speaking population, and they are one way or the other going to bring about their target mission to the end the way they want to bring it about, which means they may go all the way. I was looking at the reports. They are closing in on Pokrovsk, which is a major downfall for Ukraine and for NATO, because again, this is a proxy war for NATO. They are closing down into the shores of Dnieper River. That's as far as they probably may go. They may go close down into Odessa, creating a landlocked country out of Ukraine, and then leaving the western part of Ukraine to the rest of the Europeans to split apart. They'll leave it up to the Poles, to the Hungarians, because all of them, in fact, have some interest in that part of the world. So as you said, yes, NATO continues cosplaying, but I find it interesting that Germany is doing this insane game, because Germany, their situation is coming to a halt. AfD is rising in power. And interestingly enough, I was talking to my friends from AfD a couple of days ago. Their peace plan that they proposed not too long ago is very similar to this peace plan that President Trump proposed. So there is an emerging nationalist, conservative element of Germany that understands very much the continental power alliance between Berlin and Moscow, which is a major threat to somebody like the British Empire or London, again, being the naval power. So there's a lot at stake here, but I think President Trump will be working closer together with his Russian and Chinese counterparts, because look, the Russians would want to hand him some sort of a win, like a foreign policy win, if they could. But it's a matter of what's going to happen with Zelensky and how the Europeans are going to push this. But I'll tell you, Zelensky, Merz, little Macron, they're all dead men walking. If you remember, during World War I, Europeans used to say for the Ottoman Empire, it's the sick man of Europe.
Right.
And then the Ottomans got kicked out. Well, right now, the unelected bureaucracy of the European Union and NATO, they are indeed sick men of Europe.
Dr. Olga Ravasi, always great to have you on the show. Always walk away learning a number of things. So thank you so much for your insights on this, and we'll be watching as Europe tries to
wake up and free itself from the bureaucrats, because Europeans truly need a rude awakening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Dr. Olga Ravasi, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful weekend as well. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thank you, guys. Same to you.
It's just gut-wrenching to watch how Europeans are made a slave by their own unelected government. I hope that something, better comes for them.
Yeah, and hopefully the rise of the AfD, and not too many more of them die, mysteriously. 7 of them dead now in Germany. We've got more news to get to. Lara Logan's going to be joining us in moments. We're going to be talking about, is there a coup inside the Trump administration? Are there deep state assets at work trying to get rid of Pete Hegseth, install the likes of Dan Driscoll, and have more influence from Palantir and Peter Thiel and all of these individuals? Like, what is exactly going on right now? And we're going to talk with Lara about that. But first, this episode brought to you by our friends over at IQBAR, our exclusive snack and hydration sponsor. IQBAR is better for you plant protein snack made with brain-boosting nutrients to fuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without the sugar crash. If you want to try it, you can try their ultimate sampler pack, and honestly, it's the best way to try everything they make. You get IQ bars, IQ mix hydration sticks, their IQ Joe instant coffee, all in one bundle. Our son takes this every day because he deals with a lot of migraine stuff, so having that in his backpack always can prevent that and really stick it to the migraines. With magnesium, we know the benefits of magnesium all inside of that. and adaptogens that actually help you stay sharp. So over 20,000 five-star reviews. More people than ever are fueling their busy days with IQBARs and their hydration mixers, mushroom coffees, and ultimate sampler pack. Right now, IQBAR is offering our special listeners 20% off all IQBAR products, including the sampler pack plus free shipping. So get your 20% off. Got tens of thousands of you watching us right now across Rumble and X and YouTube. Go there right now. Text the word redacted to 64,000, 64000. Just text that word redacted and you'll get 20% off plus free shipping. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. All right. Well, I've been looking forward to talking about this. Is a deep state coup coming for President Trump? Nefarious forces surrounding him are neocons, deep state types trying to push or trying to control President Trump in any one way or another, or something else going on here? Is it all part of a 4D chess or 5D chess or 6D chess? I can't keep track of all the levels of chess that people are playing with us right now. Laura Logan posted this warning. President Trump, based on her sources in the intel community, said President Trump, after months of waiting, watching, investigating, and firsthand reporting, it appears increasingly obvious that you are being set up to fail, and there will be no coming back from this if you don't stop it now. Well, guess what? We've got Laura here, so I'm not going to read the whole tweet because she can tell us in her own words exactly what she sees happening here. Laura Logan, great to see you.
Hey
Welcome
there.
back to
Thank
the
you
show.
so much for having me.
So first, let me just say this. I just want to say, because, President Trump's always been great to my family. I've, interviewed him many, many, many times, just like you have. And so
I haven't actually. I've never interviewed him.
Really? Okay. I just assumed. But nevertheless, I guess my point is, there's a lot of people like on the sort of MAGA influencer space, I'm sure you've seen, will sort of claim that he's, poor President Trump, he's sort of like a toddler, and there's all these people around him that are doing things to him. He's totally unaware of it, and he's just being manipulated. And he's an incredibly smart person. And I think he can always sort of smell rats, I think. But so I just want to kind of come out and say that, because I feel like people are sort of playing him almost like as like a little bit of a toddler in these situations. What do you think about that? Because here's a guy who will go play golf with Lindsey Graham for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And he knows how much people can't stand him. Lindsey Graham, he knows how much his base can't stand him. So I'm just curious what your take is on that before we dive into some of the pieces that are working against him.
Well, I think you make a very good point, one that I've made often in conversations with people, which is that, a lot of people will talk about things and say, why doesn't Trump know this? And why doesn't Trump understand this? And my first question is, how do you know he doesn't? And why would you assume that you're so much smarter, right? You know all these things and he doesn't, or you see all these things and he doesn't. Now there is an issue of how do you get to him? What filters are being put around the president that are restricting information? Like we know, for example, that before the intel agencies withheld information from him and didn't brief him on certain things. We know that the New York Times celebrated, right? They allowed a guy who was removing briefing papers from the president's desk, which is an act of treason and sedition. They celebrated him for doing that. So we know that there's an effort to control the flow of information and to keep things from him. But what I have run up against over and over again, and I want to emphasize, it's almost a year that I've been talking to people about this. So I'm one of those people that held back. I'm not one of those people that's out there sort of piling on about this person and that person in the administration. This one's got to go, that one's got to go. I'm conscious of what I don't know, but what I do hear from people all the time is that it's kind of like there's an asteroid belt that's been built around the inner circle surrounding President Trump. And if you try to get into that inner circle, what happens is you get into the asteroid belt and you get hit from every direction. Right, from the gatekeepers who are trying to keep him away. Now, I wouldn't take that at face value either. I would still say that there's a strong argument to make that President Trump is aware of that and sees that. However, there are questions, valid questions about a lot of people, a number of people, I wouldn't say a lot, but a number of people in this administration that have yet to be answered that are cause for some concern because of the lack of action that has followed, not just because I don't like this person or I don't like that person, but because if there was real accountability that was going on now, then the questions about Pam Bondi wouldn't really matter. It's that kind of thing. If, for example, we had a State Department that actually had Trump appointees in every ambassadorial position and in the deputy positions. If that was the same in the Defense Department, then you wouldn't have to question what's going on with personnel, would you? If you had a Justice Department that was actually holding people accountable, then maybe the questions about Todd Blanche, one of the deputies there, wouldn't have so much significance. But it's the lack of action that adds weight to the concerns.
You know, so you mentioned Todd Blanche. Are there others? We've covered Susie Wiles here on the show as really a gatekeeper. Noel Frisch was just on our show last week with his reporting on Susie Wiles. And we know firsthand just the information that's not getting to President Trump. Who else? I mean, do you care to name names? Like, who are the people that are actively trying to sabotage his presidency? And do you think he knows about it?
Well, I obviously don't know all of the names, right? And as I said, I'm conscious of what I don't know. I'm also, as a journalist, it's what's really difficult is that when you start to name people, right, and you put things out there, especially people of great significance, that becomes a very difficult position to be in. So, for example, you know, for many years, long before Marco Rubio was the Secretary of State, it was there were many people within the intelligence community who said that he was run by Cuban intelligence. Now, can I prove that Marco Rubio is working for Cuban intelligence? No, I cannot. He is also now not just the Secretary of State; he's the National Security Advisor, and I think he has another position as well. So, you know, I mean, that's a lot of responsibility that is put at one person's door. And so you start to wonder, you know, when you look into Venezuela, there's definitely a component within the CIA that has a lot of control over what has happened in Venezuela. And there's been an effort in the Trump administration to shift control. There's obviously a significant effort underway, right, to dismantle the power structure in Venezuela, which is Maduro and Cartel de los Sols. So there's an element within the administration that is pushing for cartel light, right, as opposed to going to, for example, Claudia Sheinbaum and her partner, who actually are believed to have won the last election, who's a political opposition figure. So when you look at that, then you start to think, okay, well, exactly what are Rubio's connections with Cuba and who else is connected to Cuba, right? Because people talk a lot about who's on the payroll of the CCP, but what they should also be talking a lot about is who's on the payroll of Chevron, right? Because who's the major oil player in Venezuela that has extensive links into the United States, that has a lot of people on their payroll here. Right. So can I tell you definitively this person or that person? I can tell you the people whose names come up consistently. Todd Blanche's name comes up consistently. There are a number of intel groups that are tracking these things and have pointed to some very disturbing things in his record. And then when you look at the fact that, you know, Peter Tickton, who is an attorney for Tina Peters, has come out boldly and said that Todd Blanche is blocking that. I mean, any kind of action to take a woman out of prison who everyone knows at this point was put in jail because she documented and actually had, you know, proof of some of the fraud in the 2020 election. You know, so you start those questions become more and more legitimate. There's a guy in the Intel department, Aaron Lucas, who was a CIA person, you know, which doesn't make him automatically, you can't say every single person that worked for the CIA is a bad guy. But then when you start to see what's happening in the intelligence community, you start to hear that people are, you know, pushing for people to work with the deep state rather than prosecute the deep state, where people are arguing for maintaining the system instead of replacing the system. Well, then you have to start looking around and say, where is this coming from within the community? Who are the people within the administration that have got into these positions that are not doing their jobs or are preventing people from doing their jobs? So, for example, you know, personnel is a big one. Why are there so many positions in the Trump administration that are not filled? Well, that will point you to Sergio Gore, who's been removed from being in charge of White House personnel and is now the ambassador to India. And you know, but that doesn't fully answer the question. Why does he have people working for him, you know, who are very, very young and inexperienced? That's one of the, you know, his replacement now, right? You talk about, I think is it Sekulow? No, it's not Sekulow. Is it Scavino that's down there now in personnel.
Scavino,
Well,
yeah.
we have a major problem in the Trump administration is that, for example, you have 8 deputies in intelligence in the Department of Defense. Most of those positions are still occupied by people that were whose loyalties are not to this president. They're loyal to the previous president. That's the same for the Department of Justice. That's the same for many other departments within the administration. It's too long now. We've been in the Trump administration has been in power too long for someone to dismiss these concerns. The TSA, one of the worst agencies in the United States of America, still has an acting administrator. FEMA still has an acting administration. What happened to, we're going to reform FEMA, we're going to reform the TSA. You know what you can't do? You can't reform an agency when you have a person in there who's temporary and who is not loyal to the current administration, is not going to be implementing their policies with any sort of determination. And, you know, why do we not have any of the executive orders that Trump has enacted? Why are they not being implemented? There was supposed to be a 90-day review on foreign assistance. There's an executive order for that. There's not been a 90-day review of foreign assistance. There was another one that said they're supposed to rewrite the Foreign Service Manual. You know why? Because every time Trump tries to do something with foreign policy, and he is the diplomat in chief, right? He's not just the commander in chief. He's the diplomat in chief. What do they say? They refer to the Foreign Service Manual and say, oh, you can't do it that way. Well, rewrite the Foreign Service Manual. He did an executive order that gives him the authority to do that, and yet it hasn't been done. Why are there so many ambassadors who gave Biden ambassadors who gave their resignations on day one, and they're still in their positions? How can you expect someone from the last administration who's a political appointee of the Democrats to implement the Trump agenda? They're not going to do it. And this is a major problem, and it cannot just be swept under the rug at this point, because the midterms are looming. And you and I both know what happens when you get close to an election, 6 months out or longer. They start saying, oh, you can't indict somebody now because this will be regarded as election interference. We'll have to wait till after the midterms. And their plan is not to wait out 4 years of Trump. Their plan is to only have 2 years of Trump.
I want to be cognizant of your time. I'll get you out of here. I know we trying to say up against a 5 p.m. time. I want to get you out of here on time. Do you believe they're going to move towards impeachment? And everything 100%. You're saying, 100%.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. Look, we just had an election stolen in Virginia. I don't know if anybody was paying attention to those election results, but it's ridiculous. I mean, when you see what the mail-in ballots were the night before and then what they were the following morning, this is insanity. I mean, if Trump loses the House or the Senate or both, his presidency is over. Like, forget about it. I mean, he is 100% impeached. And why is it going to succeed this time? Because what they're going to use to impeach him is their failure to hold people accountable. Why do I say that? Because look at the information that they have. The intelligence community did a 5.5-month investigation into Russia collusion. That is one of how many investigations that have been done. Barry Loudermilk's committee, years before Trump got into office, he's a Republican congressman, they investigated January 6th. There's multiple investigations. Comer at Oversight, Judiciary. These investigations have been carried out. There is more than enough information at this point, which shows that treason and sedition was carried out. It shows the people responsible. We see this ongoing conspiracy right now. We've just had the Seditious Six come out with a video, and not only that video, but they're actively encouraging members of the United States military to violate the Uniform Code, UCMJ, the Code of Military Justice, Uniform Code of Military Justice. So why are these people still free and able to carry out crimes against the American people and against their own country? Because they haven't been held accountable. Well, guess what? You know who's going to go down for those crimes? It's not going to be those people. It is going to be the people who are in power now, who have sworn an oath to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States from enemies, both foreign and domestic. Right now, they are in violation of that oath. And the Biden administration violated that oath, for example, by opening the border. They didn't protect the borders of the United States. That was their responsibility. But if the people in power today don't hold them accountable for that,
Right.
If we don't hold Obama and all these other people accountable for treason and sedition, for the conspiracy that they are guilty of, they're going to turn around and impeach Trump for failing to do so. And I know that may sound counterintuitive to a lot of people, but you got to remember, look at these people. They took 1,500 people from January 6th. They destroyed those families. They lost no time at all. They violated their First Amendment rights and a plethora of other constitutional rights. They didn't get free, and their right to a free and fair investigation was violated. Their right to a free and fair trial was violated. I mean, for goodness sake, they were carried out. The same judges in Washington, D.C. that convicted one person after another, after another, after another. How can you get a free and fair trial? You cannot. How can you even have a jury of your peers in Washington, D.C.? I mean, so, they don't care about violating your constitutional rights. Their back is against the wall, and they have a plan for getting out of it, and their plan is well underway. And if the people who are in power today don't uphold their oath, if these people who know how much fraud, how much waste, how much abuse, how much corruption has been carried out, do not uphold the constitutional right of every American for redress of grievances, they're going to be the ones going down for it. And the people who committed those crimes are going to get away with it. And they're never going to look back. Eric Holder just said it. We're going to get rid of the Supreme Court. We're going to pack the Supreme Court. You know, the Democrats have said repeatedly they're going to get rid of the Electoral College. They will never, ever, ever take the chance that they will ever be in this position again. And my bet is they're going to be more vindictive than they have ever been. You want to talk about, we know they used projection. We know that they used corruption in Ukraine to their advantage. Then they turn around and try to impeach Trump for it. Every single thing they're accusing Trump of doing, they've already done. It's an information warfare tactic. So when they say he's going to use the death penalty to get rid of his enemies, you can be damn sure they're going to use the death penalty to get rid of theirs.
Yikes.
Absolute fire. No, you're 100% right. I hadn't seen it like this at all. This is why you're so great. Laura Logan, thank you so much for this. I definitely wanted to have you on to dive more deeply into this, and I think you make some incredible points, and I think you're right. I mean, you got these guys like Alejandro Mayorkas walking free, all these people who facilitated a mass immigration into our United States, the sex trafficking children into the United States.
Yep.
Why the hell are these people still allowed to walk through frickin' airports? These people should be under arrest behind bars for treason.
That's correct. You're 100% right. And guess what, Clayton? Every single person that voted for President Trump and voted for accountability is going to feel betrayed. So they're going to take that emotion, and that's what they're going to use. And when they're done taking down every single person that voted for him or worked for him or supported him, and then all the other people that maybe share some of these values and concerns, when they're done getting rid of all of them, you know what's going to happen? No one's ever going to raise their hand again because they saw what happened. This is the only shot we have. The only shot we have. So whether you like him or you don't like him, if you believe in freedom, if you believe in the Constitution of the United States of America, then you better put aside your partisan politics and look at the truth and stand up and be heard.
Amen. Laura Logan, great to see you. Thank you so much for this. I hope this is a wake-up call. The wake-up call that we all need.
Watch it. You can find out more, and you can see the receipts and the evidence on my episode that's dropping on Friday, Going Rogue with Laura Logan. I have an amazing guest who has spent 9 years documenting the evidence of this.
So watch that tomorrow. That'll drop tomorrow. Going Rogue with Laura Logan. Easy for me to say. Check that out. Check that out tomorrow. Thank you so much, Laura. Great to see you, and Merry Christmas if we don't get a chance to talk.
Thank you so much, and same to you.
Thanks, Laura. Wow.
All right. That was a bombshell. Everybody take a breath after that. Yeah, she was fantastic. Okay, coming up, we're going to talk about why are over 1,000 American Christian pastors in Israel getting government programming. That's interesting, right? A major summit called the American Ambassadors for Israel Summit. Is your pastor there signing an ambassador agreement? Why would they do that? Even a cursory knowledge of the Bible would tell you that adherence to global governments is wrong. So what's happening there? We're going to talk about that in a second. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Lear Capital, because we are an anti-war show for many reasons, not just because we value human life, but also we value the human dollar. Every time the government wages war, it is a theft of the working class. That is the cost of war. But here's what's not said out loud, is that it is also stealing from our financial future. Right now, the U.S. is on a dangerous path with record spending, endless global conflict, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Iran, add to that Venezuela, all of it fueled by borrowing from the working class. You have to go to work so that they can do this. It's brutally expensive. Now we're in the $37 or $38 trillion in the debt region. The only solution is the government to print more money. That means inflation, a weak dollar, your savings devalued by the day. As the saying goes, savers are losers. Well, that's why we want to tell you about our friends over at Lear Capital, because they can teach you to leverage your money right now into wealth preservation with precious metals. So gold, silver, they can teach you exactly how to invest, in what form, what type you might be interested in. If you call this number, a real person will pick it up. It's literally like, hello, what can I talk to you about? They have all the time in the world to teach you this asset class. You also can get a free investor guide as well if you go to learredacted.com right now, or call them 800-613-3557. Again, no pressure, just facts. They're just going to chat with you. We started investing in metals years ago, and I was one of them who was like, why would I own this? What's the point of this? Well, that has turned out to be an expensive question because we waited too long, but it's not too late. In fact, Goldman Sachs is already predicting that gold could hit $4,500 an ounce by 2026. So don't lose money by waiting. Learn this today. Go to learredacted.com or give them a call, 800-613-3557. Well, this week, a group of more than 1,000 American Christian priests and pastors are in Israel to become ambassadors. This is called the Ambassador for Israel Summit. Here's the itinerary. It's posted publicly. You'll notice that they get treated to a full October 7th experience, and then they meet with Israeli politicians and IDF generals before going to Jerusalem for a worship and celebration. Here is the curriculum. They'll study this two-part manual. It's basically a textbook going over Christian Zionism as a foundation and then a decisive force in Jewish history, even though Christian Zionism is quite new in the last century, but they are establishing this. They're weaving it in and out through history as biblical. How do you think Christians should feel about their pastors being groomed by a foreign government? The Bible is clear that allegiance belongs to God, not governments. Scripture repeatedly warns that human governments are temporary. So if a pastor is being trained, funded, ideologically shaped by a man government, wouldn't it stand to reason that that pastor is compromised, politicized at the very least, no longer spiritually independent? How does this comport with a relationship with Jesus Christ? It seems the early church would have seen this as outright corruption, but what now? How is this happening? Joining us to discuss is Father Turbo Qualls. He's an Orthodox Christian and someone I was excited to talk to about this because I've seen some of your work about this. Father, this ambassador program, it blends biblical prophecy with modern nationalism, implies that Christians owe loyalty to a foreign state. How does this align with Orthodox teaching about the kingdom of God and the role of the church?
Well, first of all, it's great to have me on. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Just to be very straightforward and frank, it's contrary and antithetical to the historical and patristic teaching of the Orthodox Church. All the way from apostolic times, all through the patristic age, which is the early, 8th centuries, and the establishment of the church, it's been clear that the promises that were given to the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, have been fulfilled and they're completed within the body of Christ. So any movement that would speak different from that, the church would historically say is problematic. And as you mentioned earlier, this idea about Christian Zionism is really new. It's a very, very new movement. And the Orthodox Church, which we, hold the beginning reins from the apostolic times. We are the historic church, and the church fathers have said unanimously that the Church of Jesus Christ is Israel. So we see this as an innovation, Zionism as a problem, and it's contrary to the teachings of Christ, the apostles, and all the church fathers.
Now, maybe you should know who you're dealing with. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, so my study of the Bible was in depth as a child, and I knew from a very early age that the Bible forbids adherence to man-made government. The scripture tells us, give Caesar's thing to Caesar's. It's basically a go along to get along, but your faith should not be in man-made government. So how is it that these American pastors are doing this mental gymnastics to be trained by a foreign government? How can they, in an intellectually honest way, do that?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of these pastors and a lot of their congregations have been given a doctrine that is unfortunately false, and it's been slowly woven in such a way that it seems acceptable. But the problem is that the absence of history can cause all kinds of problems. There's that old adage, one who does not know history is doomed to repeat it. And so this teaching preys fundamentally on the ignorance of many people's knowledge of church history. And to be frank, knowledge of scripture. One of the problems is that there is a teaching called sola scriptura, which is this idea about adhering to the scriptures alone, which conveniently removes any type of historical interpretation. And the problem with that is that, as you can see with Zionism, it can be easily manipulated to whatever ends. And so we have seen, whether it's Zionism or any other type of movement that would seek to distort the teachings of Christ, this teaching of being able to pick and choose, cherry pick scriptures, it's very effective in leading people and manipulating them to an end outside of salvation in Christ. And that's essentially what we're dealing with.
Okay. I don't want to be too personal, but I will say
Please.
that this, I'm just going to confess something to you so that we can have an honest conversation, because this idea of studying Christian Zionism, it sort of popped out of nowhere for me politically, because it is not a part of Jehovah's Witness teaching and the teachings that I knew. And so I went looking to read about the Schofield text. I went looking to understand dispensationalism. And so that has forced me to restudy Christianity in a way that I think maybe I left behind in my youth. And I find that to be comforting, and I'm glad for that. And so I'm happy to do it. But the idea of dispensationalism is that the Jews have to be back in Israel for God to come back, but eventually we do convert them into Christians. So this doesn't even end with Jews in Israel. So I mean, I guess what I'm asking you is, where do we start to study this honestly? If I'm just confessing to you where I am, and where can we do better?
Sure. Well, I have to represent my team, so I got to be honest with you. I'm a priest.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand. I'm a convert to Orthodoxy. I'm a former evangelical. And so I understand, intimately how dispensationalism and Zionism is just accepted whole hog. Most people have, on good faith, they just trust their pastors, and they don't really feel the need to go any deeper. But that problem obviously leads down difficult roads. And so, when you begin to discover that there is a historical church, for instance, in the book of Acts, it speaks about the Berean church, and it says that Paul spoke to the Bereans, and that the Bereans studied the scriptures against to see, basically what Paul said was true. Now, the thing is, the Berean church still exists, but when you go there, it's an Orthodox church. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because history matters.
Yeah.
And Zionism and dispensationalism is only possible if you blind people to the apostolic history, if you blind people and don't give them access, even acknowledging that there were church fathers that were the direct inheritors of the apostolic teaching, that fundamental cornerstone of history is how dispensationalism, Zionism, and a plethora of other erroneous teachings, that's how it gets, pushed to people, and then they swallow it whole. So the way to start forward, and we would say, is begin looking at the historical church. And the historical church will lead you towards two places, essentially the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And then from there, that history becomes very difficult at 1054. But prior to that, there's one church. And so that experience of Christ and the body of Christ and that history, which all Christians who are desiring to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ and want to find themselves in that church that Paul talks about in Ephesians, when he says there's one body, one baptism, one spirit, that historical church is the church of the ages. It's the church that you can go and see when you leave America. And that's another problem here, is that there's a woeful ignorance of these true historical monuments, which attest to this apostolic history, which is, again, the strong and true teaching is that the church is Israel, and dispensationalism is what we would call an innovation. So the way out, to answer your question, is really beginning to understand history. Now, I would say this: the thing about church history is no one's going to debate the Orthodox Church being the oldest church. The question comes around the interpretation. And the reason why I think that's important is because the facts speak for themselves. You can go and you can see all the ancient sites, take a pilgrimage, you can read the church fathers. One of the things about the internet, one of the good things is you have access to things that, 20, 30 years ago, people wouldn't have only dreamed of having access to. So you can read the church fathers now. You can read Irenaeus, you can read St. John Chrysostom, you can read St. John Damascene, you can read these church fathers, which were the disciples, the direct disciples of Christ, and you can see their thoughts on movements of history and how the church always functioned. And I think this is the way forward if anyone's confused about this. I have a channel, Synaxis of Sophia, where I conduct interviews. And my last two interviews I think are really important. The first interview was with two of my parishioners who are former evangelicals who are part of a big movement of getting evangelicals, pastors very similar to this, together and praying for Israel. And as they began to dig into the history of the church and trying to adhere to the teachings of Jesus Christ, even on a deeper level, they began to uncover the history. And from there, they began to uncover the false narrative behind dispensationalism and Zionism. So I have an interview with them on there. And then I followed up with that with an even, I think, more important interview with my friend, Father Matthew Wiley, and my other friend, Ferris, who Father Matthew is a Jewish convert. So he's a former Jew who is now an Orthodox priest. And Ferris is a Palestinian Orthodox Christian. So we sat down and we had a conversation about the reality of Zionism, the nation state of Israel, which is not a religious nation state. And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of evangelicals, they have this idea that they've been given, these Christian Zionists, about the nation state of Israel being some religious holy place. And the fact of the matter is that's not the case. There are some false presuppositions that are given to them. And so we talk about that, and we talk about, Ferris being a Palestinian, and the way forward we have all experienced is in coming under that banner of Jesus Christ, but the Christ of the historical Christ, the Christ that has established the church at Pentecost, that same Christ who had apostles and church fathers that have held that teaching that Christ came to save mankind. And I just want to say this real quick too, because, I'm a bit of an interesting guy myself, right? I mean, my church, St. Mary of Egypt Orthodox Church, interestingly enough, you can even look at my life. I'm in the Serbian Orthodox Church, but I'm clearly not Serbian. And I think this proves the point, which is being an Orthodox Christian is about being a part of the historical and eternal body of Christ. And just to be very frank, and a hard word is, this Christian Zionism, this dispensationalism, it undoes that very work of Christ coming for all peoples.
Yeah.
And so I think when people begin to understand that, they can begin to really, move forward and start looking at history. And then from there, the truth becomes really self-evident.
Right. I mean, I came across a quote recently from Pope John Paul I. He said, if I had known I would become Pope, I would have studied more. And that feels to me how it indicates how overwhelming it is to discuss something so ancient, but how do we come at it from a sincere place of just, I want to know. I don't want to argue with idiots on Twitter. Right. I don't want to support the killing of anybody. Right. I'm not God. I think a cursory knowledge of the Bible says that, you don't especially take the lives of your enemy's children. Mm-hmm. And so it's just very overwhelming to watch this political system cherry pick the Bible to justify a war. And I guess I'm asking you, how do we extend maybe our hopes for people who are misled by pastors like this, and point out, how do we go right from here, from all of these powerful Christian Zionists who are leading they're leading their people into war, which is a theft from the working class. There's no other way to see it economically. So I don't know how you can support a warring government. So what do we do with that, with these emotions that I've just thrown at you? I'm sorry.
Well, I think the first thing is, these emotions are given to us by God for a purpose. The problem is when emotions begin to leave that purpose and they lead us into what in the Orthodox Church we call our passions, where we begin to be overcome instead of, anger. And anger is given to us to motivate us to fight against injustice and to fight against sin and demonic forces. But when it becomes wrath and vengeance, then we have a problem. Fear and caution for one's life is a blameless emotion, but when it becomes crippling, when it becomes irrational, this is our passions. So what we need to do is we need to take, if we find ourselves in a place where we are overcome with wrath and fear and hopelessness and despair, this is where precisely we can begin to enter into deeper prayer, and we can begin to, and I don't mean just well wishes and empty words. I mean prayer as a mode of life. When we begin to put our heart towards hope and understanding that, as St. Paul says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places, then we begin to understand that the battle really does begin in the human heart. And then from there, it moves out to our families, it moves out to our communities, and then it moves out to our, our state. And part of the way that these powers, these fallen powers, undermine the hope of people is precisely to get them to think that they can't do anything. But within every gathering of believers, in every, in our parishes, every liturgy, every service we have, the liturgy is a battle cry in which we proclaim the triumphant call of Jesus Christ. I have my priestly cap on, and it says, "Ici, exi, nika," that's Jesus Christ conquers in Greek. And so we proclaim this every liturgy, that Jesus Christ has defeated these fallen powers. And so we claim territory when we pray. We claim territory when we take control of our families for the sake of the gospel, when we submit our lives and in our communities to live according to the commandments of Christ. And this is one of the reasons why the fallen powers, the governments, are so keen on trying to break up the work of the people. The liturgy, so many people may understand it, in the Roman Catholic tradition as Mass, but as Orthodox Christians, we call it the liturgy. And the liturgy is the work of the people. It's where we come together and we proclaim the victory of Jesus Christ and the truth of Christ, and we take territory and we play that out. We had in our church a Metropolitan Amphilochi of blessed memory, who was a bishop in Montenegro in Serbia, and he fought against, the government there and its desire to become oppressive and to take over the people. And he has a famous quote. He said, "The Orthodox Church is the only thing standing in between the NWO." And what that means is the Orthodox Church has maintained this very reality of being completely aligned and having our full fidelity to Jesus Christ. The Orthodox Church is the church that survived the Bolshevik Revolution. The Orthodox Church is the church that has survived various, Ottoman and Turkish enslavements throughout the years. The Orthodox Church is the church of the martyrs. And that church of the martyrs, understand this, to be under persecution where you might lose your family and your home for the sake of your faith, that is the historical faith. And that is the grounding where we find our power to bear witness, because martyr means witness. So we bear witness in the truth. And it's no different now in America than it was in the second century. And so the church is consisting of mothers and fathers, grandmothers, sons and daughters who they live their lives, they work their farms, they go to their jobs, and they realize that at any moment in time, they have to bear witness to the truth that Jesus Christ, died on the cross and was risen on the third day, ascended into heaven, right? This is what we stand upon, and we're willing to lay down our lives for that. And that alone, because governments, look, Paul was under the Roman occupation. And so the church was built to be in the valley. So I would say to you and to anyone who's overwhelmed, don't be overwhelmed. We were made for this. Christians were made to be in this world, not to be comfortable, but to be sojourners. And when we're uncomfortable, that's precisely where we're hitting it on the bullseye. That uncomfortableness is what allows us to have our eyes looking towards heaven. And the best of us is brought out during those times of struggle. That's when we function the way we're supposed to function. So I would just say, for anyone who misunderstands the Christian experience historically, traditionally, is one of, to be frank, resistance. But it's not resistance in regards of an earthly revolution, but it's a heavenly resistance against fallen powers. And that's what we're dealing with ultimately, are demonic forces that manipulate and they use social movements and governments to undermine the work of God, but they will not succeed.
Well, I think that's comforting, because maybe people like me will start seeking again, because you can see that there's a clear government perversion of what should be a sincere faith. So the way I guess the way I do it is just like, as if I'm, Hansel and Gretel. I just keep picking up what book is in front of me. I'm going to read it. What do I need? What did I miss? And so, if you have any, obviously, if I were asked you for a book to read, you probably would say the Bible. Is there anything else that you think that people like me should read?
I think there's some great books. There's a book called The Orthodox Way by Bishop Timothy Metropolitan Callistos Ware. It's an excellent book, and it's a 2-volume companion. The other one's called The Orthodox Church, and it's basically a historical companion to The Orthodox Way. The Orthodox Way teaches, the ancient tradition of prayer, and the Orthodox Church gives the historical one. But there's another great book called Rock and Sand by Father Josiah Trenum. And that book is excellent because it will really help people coming out of all the various, kind of traditions and milieu that us as Westerners and Americans are coming from. And it gets back to the historical roots of what the church is and how we kind of ended up where we're at with, several thousands of denominations and none of them agree. So I think those 3 books are a great place to start. And I would also say, again, that's a big part of my public ministry. I've dedicated my public ministry to really encouraging and highlighting these issues for people where they intersect in our lives, culturally, politically. And so I have a podcast, The Real Path, where me and my spiritual children discuss these things. And again, the Synaxis of Sophia, where I have these interviews touching on these very things like church history, touching on various traditions, why and how did we get to this place historically? So there's so much there's so much great content out there, but I think from those sources I've just cited, people would very easily find those breadcrumbs that you're talking about and find their way, as we would say, back home, back to the historical church.
Well, thank you so much. It really was nice to talk to you. I appreciated it again. I hope you come back, and thank you for breaking down this Christian Zionist movement and how people need to feel if they see their pastors being co-opted by a political government. So, pleasure to meet you. Please come back.
My joy. Thanks for having me on. God bless you.
Thank you. All right. He said, God bless me. I hope that's the case. He gave me some reading assignments. I will do it. So let me know what you think of that in the
But
chat.
he knows you well. Give you reading assignments.
That's
exactly.
That's what Natalie does. Yeah. It's my superpower is I will read the book. All right. Well, coming up, we're going to have a Rumble exclusive. So we're going to sit and chat with you all. If you're on Rumble, we really appreciate you being a Rumble subscriber, a Rumble Premium subscriber. If you're on YouTube, we're going to say goodbye to you in just a moment. But first,
if you've been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you should know exactly what your rights are. That's why I want to tell you about Morgan & Morgan. They're America's largest injury law firm with over 1,000 attorneys working in all 50 states. And unlike a lot of firms that settle quickly, Morgan & Morgan doesn't take lowball offers from insurance companies. Just in the past few months, they won $12 million in Florida when the insurance company offered only $350,000. And in New York, they secured $6.8 million on a case where the offer was just $275,000. And the best part, it's absolutely free unless you win. Insurance companies try to pay out as little as possible. Morgan & Morgan fights to get you more if you become their client. It only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case, and you can do it right from your phone. It's that easy. You can visit forthepeople.com/redacted, or you can click the link in the description to get started. All right, it's time for Rumble Premium on this Thursday, meaning our way to say thanks to all of our Rumble Premium subscribers. If you're not a Rumble Premium subscriber, you can do so very easily. You know, Rumble is one of the only platforms that supports free speech, and this is something that you do not get on these other social media platforms. You can go ad-free with Rumble Premium, and you get free premium content, a verified badge, and other benefits all there. You can just go in and get access to these different Rumble Premium shows by supporting our other Rumble Premium contemporaries, like our friends Glenn Greenwald and Russell Brand and others. Very easy to do right inside the app. So very easy to sign up for Rumble Premium. But we're going to hang out now. Just thank all of our Rumble Premium subscribers. So goodbye, YouTube. Thank you guys for watching us over on YouTube. And it's kind of crazy how much our Rumble audience has grown tremendously. Like, it's when we have our live show every day, far more people watch us live on Rumble now.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, people are kind of fed up with YouTube, I think, in a lot of ways. So,
you know, I will say this just before we say goodbye to our YouTube audience. I've had a lot of comments online or people saying, I'm done with you because you did this, or you stood against Israel, you did this. I don't understand what the expectations are of Redacted, but I want to set them. We don't like any government or politicians. We are an anti-war show, and we do our best to be intellectually honest. And when something leads us down a path that we don't like, we're still going to look in that direction. So I feel like, now Clayton, you talked about this at Fox before, that Fox News was very neocon Republican. Then Trump came in and Fox didn't know what to do with that because they thought like, oh, that's a blip. We don't have to deal with him.
Yeah.
And then so many Republicans liked Trump. And we can see these factions continuing to break up. So there's like MAGA faction and do we have to criticize Trump? And then there's, you know, that we don't play that game. So we're not here to win your loyalty. We're only here to have intellectually honest discussions. And a lot of times that leads us to uncomfortable paths. But if you pigeonhole us like, wait, I thought they were MAGA, why are they saying that? Then you are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, we've been
maybe
independent.
maybe this is the trajectory of modern media, right?
I don't know. I mean, because you see the lines drawn, it's like we were never in like the cat turd camp. I mean, there's certainly things that like cat turd would tweet about that I'm like, yeah, I definitely want our borders closed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like being all in on Israel and, you know, and carrying out a genocide in Gaza, like, no. So again, being anti-war, like we were never following any kind of line of any of these people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wouldn't say that there's like, we don't worship at the feet of political parties. And so that becomes really uncomfortable. So when I see these people saying, I left when you wouldn't support Israel, I was like, what would have told you that I would have supported a world government waging war from our previous coverage of Ukraine? I'm so confused that you might have pigeonholed us that way. We don't come here to disappoint you or your loyalties. We only come here, as Clayton says, to become uncomfortable and be as intellectually honest as we can.
So Nerdvana says, get Redacted, try to get some better guests. Like I said, pay them if you have to. What better guests? And by the way, who would you pay? Like, we're not going to pay guests to be on our show.
I think we've had bangers this week.
Not Lindsey Graham. We wouldn't pay him to be here.
No, like who? I mean, literally, we just had Laura Logan. We just had Laura Logan. We had Kyle Seraphin. We had who else did we have? We had
who did we have
Dr.
yesterday?
Olga
Ravasi.
She's one of my favorites. I think I've learned a lot from them this week. So sorry if you know everything.
If shows are paying guests and guests are only going on shows to get money, I wouldn't trust those guests.
Yeah, I wouldn't. What we've never paid a guest to be on our show.
We've had paid contributors. We have had.
Well, we've had reporters that we pay. Like, we've had people that are actually on the payroll who do reporting for us.
We have done that.
Like Dan Cohen and others. He worked for us for almost a year for reporting as he was transitioning from his old work to his new media. And so he would be on our show and we'd pay him like once a week for a news report that he was working on. But that's not like having a guest on the show. It's not like we're sending money to any guests.
Our guests are extremely generous with their time, and we thank them for that. We invite people that we can learn from. So
and
don't say mean things about these generous people.
No, but this person always does. I just was like just dusting it up a little bit. Someone said, "Yeah, pay me and I'll show up." That's right.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. We will, like, I have got a big guest that I'm working on to be on the show. We're going to fly them to our studio, and we'll pay for that, like their travel to be here, because it's such a big story. And like, there's going to be a lot with that. So we will do that occasionally, but we don't like pay guests. That would never happen,
All right.
Maybe cook a mistake or something.
We have done that.
Yeah. Leo Patriot, Clayton, do you show a kiss or a hug your beautiful wife lately? Natalie looks like she needs a hug.
I don't need a hug.
She absolutely doesn't. She's well taken.
I'm hugged.
She's well taken care of in that department, if you must know. That's right.
We should put a mistletoe over our set, and then make everyone really uncomfortable by just honoring it.
It's my job. That's the whole point of the show, is making people uncomfortable.
Well, I hope you take the mistletoe down when you have this said big guest coming in.
Nerdvana says, get Tucker on. Actually, I was texting Tucker the other day, and we're trying to get him on maybe next week before Christmas. I wanted to see if he's going to be here in Colorado. We'd love to have him in the studio. So we are working on that.
All right, I have a carpool. You have a Rumble Premium. Thank you for being with us this week, you guys. We will see you on Monday. You can keep going.
Are we ready to go to Premium only?
Yeah, let's go to Rumble Premium only right now, so all of our Rumblers can hang out for a little bit. Again, it's totally free, the whole show, and then if you want to join Rumble Premium, you can do that and support free speech. So come on over, Rumble Premium. Let's hang out, everyone. Bye. Gonna give her a hug later. Show we're gonna fly them to our studio, and we'll pay for that. Their travel.
Sorry,
somebody's playing back.
And all right, Clayton, you're a lucky guy. Natalie, I hope he knows that. Yes, Pirate Justin. The lucky part only goes one way. Get Fuentes on the show. Yeah, the thing is, I don't just want to have people on the show, especially when they've been on like all of these other big shows recently and retread a lot of the same things, just so people can be outraged or whatever. Like, I'd like to have, I'd be happy to have Nick on the show. But it's like you want to further the conversation. I never liked you don't want to just like retread stuff, and that's the last thing that I would want to do. So I think in the next few weeks, we're going to have some very interesting news to talk about. And that's when I'd like to have certain individuals on in that regard, not to like retread things, you know. Let me see. All right, let's go to Rumble Premium here. Let's see our commentary. So where can people find the Rumble Premium link? There,
I think it's just rumble.com/premium.
Rumble.com/premium. But don't we have like a redacted code?
Let me double check.
I thought we had a special code. Silver Charm says,